Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I am your host, Ray Harkins, and thanks for hanging out with us today. We are precariously close to episode number 20, and that means 20 hours worth of awesome content that this show, aka me, has cranked out. And I'm going to go ahead and give myself a pat on the back. I'm happy that this is continuing, and I'm really enjoying the journey that we all are on and finding out about these awesome people that are doing awesome things for independent culture. So, there you go. This is episode number 19, and let's dive into some business, and then I'll get into the guest. We are part of the Punk News Podcast Network, and you can go to punknews.org, and you can find news, reviews, rumors, not so much on rumors, but anything that happens within this music world that is considered punk, metal, hardcore, indie rock, emo, whatever subgenre you'd like to classify, you will find it on Punk News. And they also have a bunch of other podcasts, so check that out. Do us two favors. One, review us on iTunes. Even if you can't sit down for 2 to 3 minutes and write down an actual review, just click on those beautiful little stars that they have if you've ever looked at the iTunes store. So yeah, give us a rating, because then it gives us cool something in the iTunes store. And I know the more rankings that we get, the higher profile we get, and eventually my goal one day is to be featured somewhere on some sort of iTunes page and be like, yo, this is a podcast you should check out. And we can do that with the help of you. And second thing I'd like you to do, visit our website, 100wordspodcast.com, because a lot of you have written me and said, hey, I really want some recommendations for new music or movies or books or whatever, just cool shit. So go there. I'll be doing it on an almost daily basis. I've been slacking this past week, but that's just because I've been coming back from vacation. But I'll get back on it for everybody. And then eventually my hope is to get other people to start to contribute, either previous guests or other podcasters or whatever. But yeah, you can start to see that build from there. And if you're a Tumblr person, you can follow it on Tumblr, and then it just pipes right into it. Anyways, episode number 19. Our guest is Adam Vass from Law Dispute. But before I get into him, I wanted to talk about an experience I had this past weekend. I'm not a huge wrestling fan, at least as much as I used to be, from about 9 years old till about, 13 or 14. That was when I was deep in the WWF universe. Notice I said WWF and not WWE, because that's what it was called back then. But I had the experience and privilege and honor to go to SummerSlam over the weekend at Staples Center in Los Angeles. And I'm always impressed at these events, because, it's unbelievable how much goes into it. Just from obviously a logistics standpoint, but the production value, and there's just so much that goes on. And the idea that this actual event, SummerSlam, has been around for 25 years. It's its 25th year anniversary. And I went with a few friends, and made a joking comment that this event is almost as old as me, which is insane. And obviously there are many other sporting events that are, 10 times my age. But it's just crazy that something like wrestling has been able to live on through so many different iterations and change its face, because I know late 80s, early 90s is when it started to get a little violent, risque, whatever you'd like to call it. And then this company has been able to rebrand themselves, and now pretty much all you see at these events are you see couples, or you see families, or you see groups of dudes. But primarily speaking, you see a lot of families there. So it's they're husband and wife with their 2 sons or daughters, and it's just it honestly is family entertainment, because that you're not going to see anything questionable as far as too violent or scary, or something that's too provocative from the sort of sexy factor. But yeah, I'm just thoroughly impressed with how that organization has been able to kind of go through everything. And it also strikes me like the sense of community that people feel around something like this as well. Like, because, in punk and hardcore, we feel like we have this really, really cool community built around this music scene, and then it doesn't exist anywhere else. And while comparing the WWE to a hardcore show is obviously apples and oranges, there are still some parallels to be drawn, and people are so obviously die hard about these wrestlers and the stories that are built around them, and this universe as it is. And so, it is in and of itself, even though it is a very mainstream piece of culture, it still is, kind of counterculture in a way, because people look at wrestling and are just like, oh, well, that's, it's fake and stupid and whatever. But I challenge anybody that has any sort of misgivings about wrestling to go to an actual live event and not walk away being like, hey, that was pretty entertaining. Because even if you have no interest in it whatsoever, you can watch it and be like, that was fun. That was enjoyable. They do a good job of essentially just making a show out of it. So, moral of the story is go out and watch some sort of event if you ever get a chance to, from a live perspective. Even if you have terrible seats, it's still pretty funny and cool to kind of watch the people around you just be so absolutely into it. And then you kind of get wrapped up in it as well. In any event, Adam Vass is the bass player for La Dispute. And I haven't known Adam for a very long time. This is actually our conversation is the first time we've ever really hung out. I introduced myself to him, I don't know, I want to say a tour or two ago when they came through Southern California, because him and I just had a ton of mutual friends, and it was like, I feel like I need to know you. It's just one of those guys you're like, oh yeah, they keep popping up all over the place with, your own friends or professionally speaking, whatever. So he seemed like a legit dude, and after this conversation, I was just pleasantly surprised, because even though he's, I wouldn't say much younger than me, but younger than me, and I kind of have a tendency to think that people that are, maybe late teens, early 20s, don't have their head on their shoulders, so to speak, yet. Because I know myself, like, I definitely didn't, even though I thought I did. But Adam definitely has a or should I say Vass, that's actually how he likes to be labeled, so to speak. So Vass definitely has a head on his shoulders and really has a very specific voice, not only in what he does artistically with La Dispute, but on his own endeavors as well. So yeah, I was really excited to sit down with him, and I met him up in LA when he was staying here for a few days at our good friend Nick Steinhardt's apartment. Shout out to Nick for letting us record during the workday while he was busy making layouts for people. But in any event, this is what happened, and you'll join the conversation somewhere. I can't remember what we were talking about, but yeah, you'll pick it up. So enjoy.
Last 2 years that Half Heart was a band, they started coming to Traverse City, which is like an hour and a half, 2 hours north of Grand Rapids, which is where I was living.
Sure.
And I'd always be like, they would get announced, I'm like, that's so sick, like Half Heart and Verse and all.
Right.
And
all these bands I want to see.
We were always gone.
Sure.
My friends would always go and be like, it was so rad. And then
you're like, thanks for rubbing it.
I never saw them.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. Well, at least you have the Bridge 9 DVD to maybe watch.
I have it.
Yeah.
I pre-ordered that when it got announced. I'm like, yeah, I gotta make up for all the times I missed them.
Yeah, exactly. See, usually I like to start things off with like my own first experience with like either you or the band or anything like that. And I just remember hearing, because I can't remember exactly. I think it was Joey that first showed me La Dispute. And he was, I can't remember, I think he saw you guys one of the first times you came through here.
Yeah,
like,
the first time we played in California, we played like 4 shows down here.
Right.
One of the shows, when I met Joey, was at The Spread.
Oh, okay.
And this show now is really funny, but it was us and Deadhead and Rotting Out.
Oh, okay.
At The Spread.
Okay.
And to think of it now is really funny, but back then, I mean, we just put out our first record. And
so you're like, yeah, we'll play with anybody, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I remember him showing you guys to me. I initially didn't get it. I was just basically like, I was like, oh, I mean, this was the first record on No Sleep. It wasn't Vancouver.
I don't even think about that one.
Yeah.
I call that the demo, which is not true.
I mean, that I think it's a fair way.
It served the purpose of a demo.
Sure.
And
it got you guys out on tour,
and me and Chad weren't even in the band, so I kind of forget about it sometimes
because
I just wasn't there.
Right. You're like, yeah, I wasn't on that, so kind of just doesn't exist, you know. But yeah, I remember listening to it and was like, I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, I see, it was cool to hear something different. But it just didn't. I listened to it and I was like, okay, it just didn't resonate with me.
Right.
But then it was shortly after, or actually it was maybe 3 or 4 months prior to Wildlife coming out. And by that time I had seen you guys once or twice. So it started to kind of like crystallize more in my mind where I was like, okay, I see where they're coming from. I see the context. I see like, because it just puts the pieces together. Right? Yeah. Just like, who the fuck are these random dudes? Like, they kind of sound like a heavier version of Me Without You and like just, whatever. And so then once I heard Wildlife, I was like, it kind of all came together. And then once I started to see how much you guys resonated with people in general, where it's like kids didn't just, excuse me, kids just didn't connect to you as like a random band. Kids were really, really passionate about what you did.
Yeah.
And that's what it kind of all was like, and that it kind of opened up the floodgates for me to be like, I really enjoy this band. And like Wildlife, like I said, musically, it definitely kind of like hammered it home for me. And so it kind of going off that, what is it that, I mean, obviously I'm sure it's difficult for you to kind of put your finger on it, but it's like, because I think you guys are not a gray area band where it's like people either love you or they fucking hate you.
Absolutely.
And I always liked that about bands because I think that those are the bands that, it doesn't matter how popular you are, that you'll still resonate with people, 10 years down the line. And so like kind of, are you glad to be in that position?
I think so. I like that, like you said, the people that like it are really invested in it.
Right.
And that's really gratifying, playing live or just like getting feedback when the record comes out or whatever.
Right.
You get a more like deep response from it.
Sure.
It's not like, hey, your record was cool. Right. It's like, your record did this to me. Like, It affects people, and that's powerful. And then, I used to be that guy. I'm sure that everyone was at some point in time. Mm-hmm. Your band puts out a record, and you see people on the internet say whatever about it.
Yeah.
And, oh, that guy sucks. He's such a dick. He said this about it. And now I just don't care because I realize that I think that of other bands.
Right.
Like, there's no like objective taste. Like, everybody has what they like and they don't like, so I can't really fault someone for
right.
not
You can't be like,
this.
that guy's a dick because he doesn't like my band. And you're like, you like look at his profile and be like, what other bands does he like? Yeah. Why doesn't he like my band? You're like, I need to do some investigation.
And generally, there are people that don't listen to music that we wouldn't say is comparable to us.
Right. So it's too far outside of what you guys would view as like influences or whatever the case may be. Yeah, but no, I like that, and ultimately it's like why I really enjoy what you guys do is because there's so many bands that don't elicit a reaction, where it's just like, and there's nothing wrong with that because it's like there are bands that are really meaningful to each individual person for different reasons, right. But it's like I get stoked anytime I see the amount of hate that comes out for a band, like just because it does mean it's like, all right, you're hitting a nerve, like you are meaning something to people beyond just, hey, we're releasing some records and we are this band,
And there are definitely bands like that I like.
Yeah.
Like, I just think it's fun or whatever, and it doesn't need to elicit a response from me beyond just like nodding my head while I do something else.
Of course.
But I definitely think it feels better to have a result that makes someone think something.
Yeah.
Or feel something, whatever.
Right.
Whatever reaction they have from it.
Yeah.
It's far more gratifying from the creator's perspective.
Totally.
But I wouldn't mind, a couple power chords here and there either.
Yeah. You're like, yeah, we could make it simpler, more accessible, whatever. So like where were you born and raised? I mean, most of the band obviously says that Grand Rapids, right? That's kind of the inception point of the band.
Yeah.
So were you born and raised there?
No, I was born and raised in Valparaiso, Indiana, which is like
Oh, yeah.
Northwest. It's about an hour east of Chicago.
Sure.
And I lived there until I was 19 or 18.
Oh, okay.
And when I was a teenager, I was in other bands, shitty bands that I don't tell people about. I tell people I was in one awesome band before La Dispute.
Okay. I will have to ask you what the name of your very first band is. Just not even so much that people can look it up online.
No,
but...
off the record, I'll tell you.
Dude, and JB from Code Orange Kids did the same thing. He was like, "Yo, I'm not going to tell you because I'm not going to tell you my band name." But it's a funny common theme. Where
I know it exists on the internet in some way because
there you go.
I'm only 24 and I know when the internet got popular. There's probably Pure Volume page or something.
Right. It probably still exists. So okay, we can talk about that.
My good band.
Okay.
Was called Lion of the North.
Okay.
And it was just punkish, screamo-ish.
Mm-hmm.
All of our songs were less than 2 minutes, and we did a tour. They continued to be a band for a short while after I dropped out, but the tour that I did, we had a 12-minute set, and it was every song we had, and we just played as fast as we could. And
sure.
I loved it.
That's awesome. That's fun.
So being in bands like that in Indiana, which is not, it's really interesting because we had maybe 20 of us that in different pairings would be different bands, and it was very incestuous in that way.
Small community, I'm sure.
Exactly, small town, and the group of counterculture people in a small town is even smaller.
Right.
So we all got along really well, made all these bands, did whatever, just goofed off. But when other bands would come around, they'd have to come to one of us, and we all knew each other, so one of us would always play.
Right.
And all of our friends would go, and that. It was, no one really cared. It was just a fun thing to do.
Sure.
And so that was how I ended up meeting La Dispute.
Got it.
Was a functional band at that time because they had other members.
Got it. And did you just know them from coming through your city? Or
we played in Michigan.
Got
it. And then started swapping shows.
Right. Communicating with
them. And then it's only 140 miles from Valpo to Grand Rapids. So I would and I was in college at the time, but I would leave class on Thursday afternoon and drive up and just hang out for Friday, Saturday, and come back on Sunday.
Sure.
Because it's not that far.
Yeah.
For a Midwest kid, that's close.
Yeah, it's 2 hours, something like that. Yeah.
So we would just hang out on the weekends, ended up getting close, and my band started to dissolve at the same time that they kind of knew that there was some conflict in their band that was going to result in
some members
a
leaving.
Member change.
Yeah.
And so Brad and I were kind of scheming.
Okay.
I'm oh man, our band's gonna break up. I don't really have anything else to do here. I went to college, but
throwing some hints there.
Just because that's what you do after high school.
Of course, right.
I had no goals or anything. And he's like, "Why don't you just come up here for a while? And when this guy quits the band, we'll have you there." And I'll just you'll just swoop in.
Yo, I know this guy. Yeah.
And everybody
already knew you.
But not in that
sure.
We just hung out.
Right. Exactly.
Me and Chad sat next to each other in sociology class, and he didn't know that I was joining the band for a whole semester. We sat next to each other. We did we would team up on projects and stuff.
Sure.
I knew, and he didn't know.
That's incredible. You're I know a secret about your band. I'm probably gonna be joining it pretty soon. That's incredible. So, but most of your formative years were in Valpo, and because large colleges there, right?
We have Valparaiso University.
Right. I'm a fan of college basketball, so that's anytime I hear.
Yeah, when I was in 4th grade, Bryce Drew hit the buzzer beater, and they went to the Sweet 16.
Exactly.
And that was our claim to fame.
Sure.
And home of Orville Redenbacher.
Oh, okay.
Home of the popcorn festival.
The popcorn festival
every year.
Okay. So do you have fond memories looking back? I mean, I guess. Well, I'll back up even further. So when was your family structure? Parents, what they do for a living, and kind of how were you raised? Did you go through divorce or anything like that?
No, my parents are still together.
Nice.
My mom's a 1st grade teacher.
Okay.
And she's on her last year now. She's retiring soon.
Oh, nice.
And my dad, when I was young, he sold carpet, which I barely remember.
Sure.
And then his dad was a landlord of some apartment buildings downtown.
Oh, okay.
And then with dad's brother.
Mm-hmm.
Then my dad and his brother took over their
the
business.
Property management and stuff like that. Nice.
And he still does that mostly.
Okay.
So it's very like small town, normal people, Midwest, like everything. I have a younger sister who's only 2 years younger than me, so
okay.
She was like not a cheerleader, but one of the other things that they would perform at the football games and stuff.
Oh, okay.
It was a little bit more well respected than cheerleading.
Right.
And
there took I guess a little more artistic effort than just performing these very simple routines.
Just wearing a skirt,
right.
Popular. So I was just like very normal.
Sure.
But I wasn't cool. She was cool.
Got it.
So I was like small town nerd, the public school and
right.
all that.
So in high school, like what were you? When did independent music kind of come into your view, and kind of like what was your high school experience? Were you kind of like the sort of fantasy nerd, the art guy? Like what sort of role did you feel you filled?
I was definitely an art guy.
Yeah.
I was like, I think I still am.
Yeah. You kind of fill that role still.
Just like two art classes every semester for all of high school, like so a lot, and then going into the advanced art program, which was basically you just make art and no one teaches you anymore.
Right? Yeah.
It's like, hey, just paint a picture. It's due in 2 weeks. So I'm like, oh, all right.
You're like, I can do that.
You get to do a gallery thing at the end.
Oh wow!
So, but it was just like all high school kids and just your friends came.
That's cool.
It was cool.
Yeah, it sounds like a fun experience.
And but I was definitely like outsider drawer guy.
Sure. You're the guy sitting under the tree, kind of doodling your own stuff. Where it's
sit at the end of someone else's lunch table during lunch and just like draw them like getting a piece of pizza thrown at them or something, like quiet resentment that no one ever saw.
That's incredible. But when did art come into your life? Because obviously art is still a huge part of like who you are and what a lot of people identify you with.
I've drawn forever. Like, I mean, it wasn't formal by any means. You know, when you're a kid, you have crayons and your parents take you to church, but you don't care about whatever is going on over there. You just have a box of crayons and you're drawing monsters in the back pew or whatever, which is, in hindsight, like, probably one subject that's looked down upon by the church.
Sure.
You draw weird monsters, like eating people and stuff.
You're like, that's what I'm into. I'm sorry.
Well, they're cool, man.
Yeah, they are awesome.
And so just from that, it just, like, never stopped. It just got better as I got older because I understood more about there's more than crayons or whatever.
Right. You understood the technique once it came into your vision.
In like 6th and 7th grade, there was this public access drawing show, and I would come home from school and start at 3 o'clock, so I'd always have to like kind of hurry.
Yeah.
And just draw goofy cartoons with the guy on TV.
That's incredible. Because it's funny. People like, I mean, those programs still exist. Like, there's definitely like in Southern California, and like, I mean, I live in Orange County, like an hour south here of LA. There's totally still one of those shows on, and it's funny because you look at that and there's no way that I would ever imagine like a kid like yourself like rushing home to like be able to draw.
So cheesy.
But that's cool.
I was in 6th grade.
That's awesome.
And this is when, going back to the original question, I started to like listen to music. And besides what my parents listened to, but granted, it was still like radio stuff.
Of course.
I remember this wild show that I tell people about now, and everyone's like, that doesn't make any sense. It was like a radio Christmas show in Chicago.
Okay.
And it was Dashboard Confessional, AFI, 311, Korn, and Jane's Addiction.
Oh, it's incredible. That's
in that sequence.
Total radio show. I love that. I love that they do that, where it's just like, let's put these random bands.
None of these bands make sense.
None. No.
And I was the kid with an Emo Sucks patch on my backpack with the glasses that I then wore for 4 years, like broken on the patch.
Incredible.
And so Dashboard's playing, I'm like, this sucks. But then I got into AFI from that.
From that show,
Like going from listening to the radio, then, there's weird, like, it was right when Sing the Sorrow came out. It's like kind of gothy, but still pretty punk band, and I was like, damn.
Yeah, you're like, this is what I identify with.
Yeah,
that's cool.
And it was really cool. And then 311 played, and I'm like, why does it smell like a skunk in here?
You're like, this is such a weird experience.
I think that was my first introduction to any kind of drug.
That's incredible. 311 introduced me to weed.
It had to be.
I mean, that is a very appropriate thing to be exposed to. Yeah, exactly. That's cool. Well, that's cool that AFI was kind of like, you would kind of view that as sort of like the gateway into you investigating other stuff.
Yeah, because Sing the Sorrow was a pretty big record commercially. Yep. But then from getting that, you get like Days of the Phoenix, you go further back, yep. and then you're like just into pure punk, yep. and singing things that I never knew existed before.
Sure.
But it was awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
And then from there, I got into like similarly dark, but not dark, mm-hmm. Like Alkaline Trio and stuff.
Sure.
My best friend in 8th grade was like a huge Alkaline Trio fan.
Got it.
And I kind of didn't really understand anything about it.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is cool. Why are there like people? Why is everyone wearing black and makeup and stuff? Sure. And the songs sound like this.
Yeah.
But even now, I'm still there. And
you're like trying to put it in context and like.
And I like to sing about drinking and stuff, and I'm like, drinking is lame. Yeah. Now,
right.
12. Of course, drinking is lame because that's what they tell you in school.
Right. Of course. You're like, yeah. Why would you sing about drinking? That's a terrible idea. That's awful. So then, as you were, so basically during high school, that's when you kind of started to figure out you wanted to play an instrument, or kind of how did that?
I was like 12 or 13 again, mm-hmm. and I started to go to like local shows.
Got it.
Same friend. Her name is Jen, mm-hmm. who got me into Alkaline Trio. She was into ska.
Oh, nice. Of course.
As you will be at 12 years old.
Of course.
As everyone will be at 12 forever.
Yes, completely allowed.
And for whatever, there was like a band at our high school that was a ska band. Mm-hmm. Who I can't remember. They were called the Dirty Skanks.
Oh, of course. They need to have a ska name.
School made them change their name. But I can't remember what they changed it to.
That's incredible.
And I would end up seeing them in like this loft above a restaurant downtown, but they were the only ska band, so they would end up playing with
everybody,
the hair scene bands and whatever that genre it was then, like bands that all sounded like From Autumn to Ashes, but I was still so down.
Yeah, of course.
And this kid Aaron, who sat next to me in math, I would let him cheat off my math homework, and then he would get me into all these shows.
Oh, and nice! That was like
that was my true into like the music that wasn't commercial.
Right.
Like, it happened in my town. Mm-hmm. It's been here all these years, and I just didn't know because I was a little kid.
Sure.
And now this guy who like, oh sure, I'm smart at math. Here's my answers. If you can like, teach me what this is.
Right. Hook me up with getting into a show or whatever.
Yeah.
That's cool.
He taught me what straight edge was, and then 2 years later he wasn't, but I still thought it was really cool. And,
right.
I mean, you're 14. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, you're like, straight edge describes me.
Yeah, I don't do any of those things because I'm a 14-year-old.
Right. So I don't have access to this. That's cool. So that was your basic introduction to that, and then what made you?
I just thought it was really cool.
Yeah.
Like, and in a way that's not like basketball players at school are cool, and it's different, but it's like a creative thing, and all these things combined. Right. To be something that was cool by being not cool, and it was some weird cycle of logic there. I'm like, yeah, sure, I can do that.
Right, I can get into this.
I think I understand that. Mm-hmm. But most of my friends that played only were like in school band. They want ska band in the making.
Sure.
But I wanted to play bass because from them being like, hey, listen to Mad Caddies, listen to Less Than Jake, like all these ska bands. Like, the bass is really like the cool part of the ska band, and I can't play horns, so I can play guitar. Who they just play the same chord in upstrokes, or I can play the bass and be that freaky guy who's like he's not the shining star of the band, but he's definitely what makes ska interesting.
Sure,
he can make or break it. Okay, I'll do that.
Interesting. That's what because I've never. Usually people are just like, oh, I know how to play guitar, or it's like they're introduced to an instrument and they're like, oh, I'm going to choose bass because that's the easiest.
I was purely a bass player from the beginning, not a guitar player that was then a bass player.
Sure.
And that's where even now.
Yeah, you're a pure bass player.
Yeah. Now I try and play guitar, I don't get it. I'm the opposite.
Yeah, you're like,
there's too many strings. Yeah, too little.
Let's eliminate two of these things. Now we're talking. And the thing that I find interesting, especially about your art, being younger, being less younger than 25 years old. You have a very defined voice for kind of who you are and what you do, artistically speaking, you know. And I think that's pretty interesting, because usually it takes, like, I reflect upon myself where it's like, you know, I did feel comfortable with what I was doing when I was that age. I mean, I'm 31 now, and I'm definitely more comfortable than I was when I was 24 or 25. But, you know, kind of just seeing, like, you're confident. And that's, I don't know whether or not maybe you do feel confident just in that aspect of your life, or, like, I don't know, like, what.
Generally, I'm confident, I'd say.
Yeah.
But I think that was just kind of a mental thing, because for even in high school, like later in high school, 18 and 19, I was still making stuff.
Right.
But in a weird way that I just made it because it looked cool, and it was kind of empty. And I wouldn't say that everything I do now has some intrinsic value or deep meaning, but it's more on my mind while
it's like a time cap. Yeah, sure.
But you know, back then I didn't know why I was making it, or anything, music or drawings or whatever. And then in the last however many years, kind of just figured out. Well, I don't know. I don't think you ever really figured out.
No, yeah. It's constantly evolving, but yeah.
I have at least an idea or excuse.
Right.
Just roll with it and just tell myself that I'm right.
Yeah.
And then I am, because I say so.
Sure.
And
well, yeah, you're the only one that dictates that mental state. Yeah, that's true.
Because even 2-3 years ago, I would paint all the time, but I'd be like, nobody wants these. Like, these are going to sit in my drawer forever and whatever. I think almost telling myself that they have worth, or that like things that I make are worth my time and stuff, makes them then worth my time. Yeah.
Kind of
almost like a placebo.
Right. But, like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, this is exactly. I know it's worth something because I think it's worth something.
Yeah.
Therefore, other people should think it's worth something.
Yeah.
And that's definitely, I think that, like you were saying, that's confident, because there's a difference between confidence and arrogance. Like,
true.
Clearly, I mean, I personally don't see any arrogance in your work.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Because there's definitely a very fine line between those two, but it's like, that definitely, you can be confident without sounding like a dick, you know? Like, you could be, once you've crossed over to arrogance, like, that's obviously when you're a dick. But, the obviously things, especially now with like Law Dispute, and obviously how well the band is doing in general. What I always like to ask people the moment where they kind of like a switch flipped in their head, where it was like it was either something that you guys did, whether it was a tour you got on, or whether it was like a show or whatever. There's those like intangible moments where it's like, oh shit, like something's really like happening, whether or not it means like, oh my god, I'm making so much money now, or whatever, you know, like, it doesn't have to be attached to that, even though that is an easy thing where it's like, oh wow, I can come home from tour and not have a job instantaneously. What was the moment for you that you kind of noticed where it's just like, oh wow, people are really paying attention to what we're doing, or, you know, caring?
We put out Somewhere, which is, like I said, what I call our first record, at the end of 2008, and then we had toured a little bit before that, but basements and stuff, and then even after that we were doing basements, and it was like in the Midwest we would do fine because it's the Midwest, and you either have nothing to do and just want to go outside of your house, or you were familiar because of the weird like network that was our area. And then once we start to get out further, people, you know, I remember when we met Chris Hansen, we played at what I think is a restaurant in California, and he was there with, I think his friend Garrett.
Okay, Yep.
And this girl, Lauren, who was my old roommate's ex-girlfriend.
Okay.
And we played for the 3 people.
You're like, and that was the audience.
And so we're like used to that. And then maybe a couple months, like 2 or 3 months after that tour, we got an email from Jeff Rickley from Thursday, who's like, hey, I got your record and I really like it, and we're doing this tour with our new record and we want you guys to do it. And we're like, what?
What?
Jaw dropped.
Totally.
I remember recently having talked about it because at the time, for whatever reason, we were all into this phase of listening to Circle Takes the Square all the time.
Oh, sure.
Which I've liked since I've heard them, but that was, for whatever reason, we were deep in it.
Everybody was obsessed with it.
Listened to it
as the
all
Roots
the time.
undo 24/7. Yeah, of course.
And we were like, is it so weird that Circle Takes the Square did that tour with Thursday? And we're like, that's cool. I love Thursday was one of the pivotal bands of
the transition point. Yeah, for sure.
And that's weird, but awesome because Thursday's on TV,
right?
And Circle Takes the Square is not,
right?
And probably won't ever be. But they're incredible in a different way,
of course.
And so we were talking about that on tour, just in the van. Like, wouldn't it be funny if we got asked, like, what would we do?
Right.
And we're like, that'll never happen.
Right.
And then it did happen.
That's crazy.
And all of us were like, that is really strange. How did it even get our record in the first place? Right. And we were all like pretty stunned by that. That was definitely the moment where we were like, something that we did worked.
Right.
And
that's actually a better way of phrasing it, like, because it is always difficult to vocalize, like, kind of, that moment where you realize, like, oh wow, something is happening. But yeah, like the moment where it's like something we did work.
Yeah.
Where it wasn't like, it wasn't us just dicking around, having fun with our friends, which ultimately is what a band is.
Yeah.
But then, like, it affected someone else outside of our camp. Who, like you said, how'd you even find our record?
It used to be we were in college, and on the weekend, Friday and Saturday night, we would try to play somewhere within, like, 3 or 4 hours.
Right.
And then we'd go home and go back to school on Monday.
Right.
And then we did that. Like, oh, this is what bands actually, like, bands that have some degree of notoriety or success or whatever, do this. They don't go to college and play all the weekend.
Yeah, they do this whole band thing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I mean, it's cool. It always is refreshing to hear that sort of mental focus on your guys' end, where it was like, it was a band. It wasn't a business plan. Like,
right.
Like, oh yeah, like Law Dispute LLC will be forged on this day in 2008. You're just like this. It just happened organically.
That did exist though, because the bass player before me was studying law.
Right.
And he thought it would be cool, and he wanted to write it all up.
Right. So that was like a project.
When I joined the band, I bought his share.
Really?
It was like $20 or something.
That's impressive.
I'll buy him lunch.
Sure.
And then I'm in the band.
And then I'm in the band. Yeah. I mean, and no slight to the band for having that, because definitely that's a whole different ball game of focus. But yeah, like the idea where it's like you guys weren't sitting in, a proverbial practice space and be like, all right, this is how we're going to look.
Right.
That's what I mean by a business plan.
Yeah.
And what was what were you studying in college? What was your...
Nothing really.
Yeah, you were just kind of...
I took a ton of gen eds.
Sure.
And I was like kind of a brainiac.
Okay.
The first semester, I went to school in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
I went to an extension campus of Purdue.
Okay.
And I was there for 1 year while I still lived in Indiana. And I studied like business or something really
something
open-ended.
Super general, right.
And I took calculus, I took physics, all this stuff I took in high school that I'm good with numbers and bad with words. And I just took them in college and I was the kid that set the curve, and all these other kids take it down a notch so we can all get a little bit better. And
stop excelling.
I took these classes already. It's not like
right.
I just remember.
I'm not like a genius. You should have paid attention to last semester. That's funny.
Then I transferred I went to Grand Valley State, which is in Michigan, as kind of a guise, because like I said, me and Brad were already planning on me being in the band.
Right.
And I went, so my parents were like, sure, you can go here.
Oh, nice. Dude, that is an amazing strategy. Like, I'm going to go up here. I'm going to go to school.
This school
here.
is really nice.
I did a campus visit.
It's just like every state school. It's nothing too special.
Right.
And I just took a bunch of philosophy, which was kind of cool, but it was just there.
Yeah.
It
just filled time for you. Like you were going through the exercise because obviously the idea, which is actually going to be my next question of like how the conversation went, because everybody comes to that point where your band starts to do something, and how do you have that conversation with your parents? Like, I'm not going to be not going to school, and I'm going to be doing this whole band thing. Like, Was that really tough for you?
My first semester at Grand Valley was the one where me and Chad were in sociology together.
Okay.
And I wasn't in the band until the end of the semester. Mm-hmm. Like, I was just biding my time.
Right.
But I was getting, like, A's because I had nothing else to do. It was the first time in however many years I haven't been in a band.
Sure.
I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm really smart if I try. And
like, if I apply myself. Yeah.
And so I was just nailing it. And then I joined the band in probably November.
Okay. And
finished that semester. We went on like a 2-week tour that was just Midwest. Mm-hmm. And it was during my Christmas break from school. And really short. I came back on a Sunday night and had class the next day in the morning.
I loved those.
Yeah.
We're just like, God, I'm exhausted. Yeah.
Oh, excuse me.
That's fine.
We all came back from that tour and we were like, that was awesome.
Right.
Even if we're playing at house parties and, you have the Christmas time and New Year's and all that. So
sure.
All of those shows were just like goofing off. Anyway,
of course.
But it was really fun and we all had a really good time. We were all a lot younger, obviously, and kind of a little more reckless.
Sure.
And came home, went to school, had band practice like the next weekend, and we were like, "Yep, school sucks." Like, remember that tour we were on like a week ago? That was what was.
That's
really
what we want to do.
Awesome.
Right.
And so we're like, "That's what we want to do." A month later, it was like a week or two after my mom's birthday. I should have timed this better.
Well, yeah. Retrospectively,
I had to tell her instead of like waiting it out.
Right.
And I knew that my dad wouldn't really have. I mean, he cared, but not like my mom would,
Right.
So I call her and tell her like, hey, after this semester, we're not coming back in the fall. And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, we just did that tour and it worked really well, and so I think we're gonna try that again, but bigger scale. Like, I want to go to California, Mom.
Right.
And like my whole life, we never traveled. We would go to Chicago because it's right there.
Right.
But I've never gone to the coasts. I never left the country.
Sure.
We're gonna go all over the place in this shitty van with people that you met that one time. You remember they stayed in the basement. And,
right. You remember those guys? Yeah.
So I'm sure it was a really convincing argument, and she was just like, at the time they were like paying for my rent and my groceries and stuff as a clause that I did well in school.
Of course.
I'm like, all right, I'm not going to school, and she's like, all right, you're not getting any money.
You're
like,
cut off. Tough love.
Yeah. Which it worked out. I'm glad that they did that, and I wasn't like they didn't hold my hand through the whole process. There was a lot of shit that we had to do that helped us in the long run.
Of course. Like, it was tough for the moment, but then you were able to learn and adapt from it.
Exactly.
Right.
And so then that semester, I was pure shit in school, too. Because I was like, man, dude, it was awesome. I was spacing out. I would skip class all the time.
Right.
We were, I had physics at the end of my day. After like an hour break, I'm like, I'm not going to sit here for an hour and then go to a class I already took. So I just go home.
You're like, peace.
And that was when we were recording somewhere.
Okay.
And so I would just go from school straight to this guy's house where we recorded the record, and every night just chill there.
Of course.
Let's do this record. We didn't know what we were doing. It was just, we have songs that exist and here they are.
Right.
And so I knew I was definitely, as soon as Christmas break was over, that switch was already gone in my head that school sucks. I mean, school always sucks, but I don't care anymore.
Right, you're like, I'm not. Yeah, this isn't something that I need to slog through. Like,
I got a D in a class. I failed my first class ever.
Wow.
Like in high school, I never got anything below a B because I thought this is gonna affect my whole life.
Of course, you're like, everything will just spiral out of control from here. Yeah. Right.
I failed one of my favorite classes just because it was at 8 or 9 in the morning. I didn't want to go.
Right. Like, I'm sorry, I'm just not showing up to this. Yeah.
And so,
how long did it take for your mom to kind of like? Was it that one conversation? Things were cut off, and then she kind of like
thought I was being unrealistic.
Got it.
And that over the course of summer, I would realize, like, hey, I'm broke and this sucks, and
sure,
I'm eating beans and rice, and I want to go back to school and have a job.
Right.
Like, I don't ever want to have a job.
Right.
And it's worked out that I haven't had to.
Yeah.
But
it
was just so different for them that they didn't really know what to do with it.
Right.
And my sister, who wanted to go to college for 4 years and graduate and have a career, as most people do.
Right.
like, man, I'm a teenager. I don't know what the hell I want to do.
Yeah.
Which should be expected of teenagers.
Sure. Does your mom, like, do they... I mean, I know, like you were saying, your dad obviously totally thinks it's amazing.
When I had the conversation with him, he's like, well, I can't pay for your rent or anything anymore. I'm like, yeah, that's part of the deal. He's like, well, your sister's she's 2 years younger, so this is like, I quit when she was going to start.
Okay.
Goes, your sister's going to college this fall. It's going to cost twice what it cost you to go. I guess it's all right. And I'm like, yeah.
I guess this balances out.
Yeah.
That's incredible. He's like, thank you, Adam. I appreciate
I see
that.
the logic here.
Yeah.
I'm saving you thousands of dollars, Dad. Like, to be happy.
Yeah, totally. I'm giving you a gift, essentially.
So
do they like where you're at now? Do they understand it more and kind of accept it? Yeah.
They're super proud, and it's been awesome.
That's great.
Because like then they thought I was a fuck up,
right?
And they didn't realize like that they have that image of sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Of course.
And
that's what it's like to be in a band, right?
Yeah. And I'm like, everyone in our band is a nerd, and I'm straight edge, and here's what straight edge is. I remember showing my dad the Champion Last Show DVD.
Oh,
and
incredible!
Telling him what straight edge was from that, and yeah,
so cool.
And then they started to like trust me a little bit more,
right?
And they actually came out to the show that we played with Thursday when it came to Chicago.
Oh, okay.
And that was the first time they'd seen us not in a basement or whatever. Right. And there was probably, I don't know, 400 or 500 people there. Mm-hmm. And obviously we were first of 4.
Sure.
But there were people there that knew us because it's Chicago.
Right.
And people singing along and stuff. And it was like pretty powerful. My mom cried.
Really?
And I was like, this is not tight, but this is tight.
yeah. No, I understand. You're like, this is like you were proud that they could look at something you were doing and be like, I back that.
Yeah, here's a result of my weird last 3 years.
Right. Because it's not like you were like, fuck you, Mom and Dad, like, I'm doing my own shit, I hate you. You were just like, I'm doing my own shit. I still love you.
Yeah.
But I gotta do this.
And there's no report card for being in a band, so they didn't know what I was doing.
That's true. I can't show you something on paper like every 6 months. Like, you just have to take my word that like things are going cool.
Yeah. And so that show kind of like turned it around for that. And I mean, my dad always thought it was cool. I'm, playing in a rock band or whatever.
Yeah.
But my mom was like, "You're gonna be bummed when you don't have a career and you're 25."
Right.
As a worrisome mother would.
Of course. Yeah. And that's an important point. You definitely, it's like if your mom like, oh, that's fine, like no questions, you'd be like, really? You don't have any questions? There's nothing?
Do you even care?
That would be a good follow-up question.
So then from there, they saw it. We did that tour with Alexis on Fire and Trash Talk.
Right.
And they saw us and were like, that was even bigger. And they've watched our band grow.
Right.
We just played at the Metro on that tour with Balance a couple months ago.
Sure.
And it was like 800 something people. And we headlined.
Right.
And my parents think, I get it. Like, people...
They felt it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's awesome.
That's cool. That's really cool.
It's very gratifying because if I was proud of myself, but my parents still thought I was a fuck up, and I'm 24 now, that would be.
It would weigh on you. Yeah, for sure. Well, that's cool because that means like because there's a lot of people, especially for whatever reason, I think in punk and hardcore, it's cool to like not like your parents, and I like.
They just don't understand.
Yeah, and I've never. I mean, I went through a similar experience with with my parents as well. Like once I told them I was dropping out of school and all like, but I always had I cared about what they thought, and it wasn't like this. Just like you said, I'm being reckless, and so it's just cool. I like when people have those close connections with their family because it's like that's fucking important. Like they're gonna be there when your band isn't. Like,
right.
that will still need to exist far into the future, as opposed to like this. Oh, I'm gonna burn my bridge and I'm gonna fucking tour and play to like 400 people a night or whatever. Yeah, it's like you have to have a overall perspective of it, otherwise you're just gonna be bummed. Like you said, like that'll weigh on you, and you didn't want that to be.
Everyone in our band has had that like really good. I have relationships even with their families as a result of it.
That's really
everyone
cool.
is super supportive, and it's really cool.
That's really cool to have that. Like because that is the support system beyond just the other members of the band.
Right.
It's like everyone needs to have that back up in some way, shape, or form. And kind of wrapping things up and. What I've noticed about you yourself is like you've moved to Boston, like you obviously don't live with the rest of the band,
right.
and, you know, in the same general area. Like you've always hearing you saying that you never traveled outside, like, you know, vacations weren't a part of your family's life, and now like you know you just seem like a wanderer, and like not in a bad way.
Right.
You're just like, yo, I want to see shit, or I want to, you know, see friends, or whatever the case may be. Do you think that that's like kind of a direct response to the fact that like, yeah, I didn't see much when I was a kid?
I think so. Not because I want to see a million things now.
Mm-hmm.
It's because over the course of touring and doing everything, I have seen all these things, and then now I want to like revisit them. I don't want to have them be fleeting memories. Like, oh, you guys remember when we went to Disneyland that one time?
Yeah.
Like, hell, I'll just go to Disneyland if I want to. It's
yeah.
right there. It's not that far. It's in America. I don't, you know.
Right. Yeah, you're like, this isn't some like mythical barrier that I can't get to. Yeah.
It used to be if I couldn't drive there in a day, it was too far for me to go.
Right.
And now it's like, I mean, and with technology and having a job and like doing stuff, and I can do pretty much whenever I want, and then I just do it because I can, and then thusly think that I should.
Sure.
Or, like, I'm here right now in California just for the hell of it.
Right.
I was in San Francisco 3 weeks ago doing the same thing I'm doing now, and in 2 weeks I'll probably be doing the same thing in
somewhere else. Yeah.
So I just want to hang out. Like,
it's cool. I think you hit on something really important that I don't think a lot of people realize, like from that haven't toured, or you know, just like, you know, they see their friends' bands come through, and it's like, touring is a very lonely existence. It's really cool to obviously see these people that you know you're going to see in these towns and everything. But like you said, I mean, you're able to keep in touch with them, but it's like, you know, they're essentially, they're not as drastically, but like, you know, you sit next to a person in an airplane, and it's like, say you do strike up a conversation, and like they are cool and like whatever, but then they leave you, and then like, you know, they kind of fall into your life, and like sometimes that's how people are on tour, and it's like,
I definitely have that.
Yeah.
And there, you know, so and so will text me, hey, you're coming to, I don't know, Florida. I don't have any friends in Florida.
Right. Yeah.
You're coming to Florida. I'm going to see you in 2 weeks. I'm like, that's awesome. Let's hang out. And
sure.
You like come to the show, and then I get to drive the next day. So I'll see you for 4 hours.
Yeah. And at a show where it's like clearly not optimal time to be like,
it's not a good.
Hey, let's hang out. Yeah.
So now I just, if I want to see somebody, I just go.
Yeah.
You know, and it's rare because right now we're not on tour, so that's why I get to take.
Right. You're like, I am taking the bull by the proverbial horns, and I'm doing this. Yeah. That's cool. That's yeah. Like I said, I think that's just an important point that people don't, you know, 'cause like you said, that people have a certain perception of tour, and it's like they don't realize that those connections can be lost because people once you go through a town, people go back to their normal lives. Like you go to your tour life is like a suspended state of animation, where it's just like it's this world that exists outside of the real world.
Yeah.
And so many people just don't understand. They're just like, oh yeah, dude, they're fucking living it up on tour. And sometimes it's like, yo, it sucks to be on tour. Like, I fucking hate it because I'm alone or whatever.
Yeah, all of my friends are so spaced out. Like, I'll never have. Actually, I think at Crazy Fest, at Fest, you know, the rare occasions that all of these bands are playing, all of my friends are never in the same place at the same time.
Right.
And so if I want to, it's hard to sustain those relationships when you see each other for 4 hours at your work, essentially.
Yeah.
So that's been one of the best parts of doing, like, just traveling for the hell of it. And
right.
I haven't seen the guys in Touche since December, and just, you know, picked up where we left off here and just hang out all the time. And everything's awesome. But after this, I probably won't see him again for a few months.
Right, exactly.
And it's good that I can come and we just pick up where we left off, because I feel like that's a true friendship. Like, I
totally agree.
I don't have to be like, so, you know, what have I been doing for the last 8 months and that we haven't spoken.
Totally. You spend like 10 minutes filling each other in, where it's like, dude, this cool stuff's happened. I have a girlfriend, I have a boyfriend, whatever the case may be. It's like you spend that 10 minutes and then it's just right back to where you were.
And it's great.
Yeah.
That's been the best part of doing, like, vacation.
Right.
Is that I'm here under a different circumstance, and I actually get to do, you know, I get to see their normal life.
Right.
What is their normal life?
Right. You get to actually spend more than 8 hours in a city, as opposed to, you know, like, where you're obviously, like you said, just going through on tour.
Yeah. And that's how I ended up in Boston, too, because we'd never been there touring. Mm-hmm. And last summer, I just took a trip. We just did that tour with the Feeder. They're like, come hang out. yeah, okay.
You're all right.
Sure, I've never been to Boston proper.
Sure.
And then, I moved in a month later.
That's awesome. That's cool.
And still love it there.
Sure. Well, I'm really glad that you obviously took the time to hang out and want to do this because, I think it's fun to show people who you are as an individual. It's not just like, oh yeah, dude, that's Adam Vass, crazy art dude and bass player.
People think of our band that we like. Well, to an extent, this is true. Just read books in like our room and cry. And we're like don't have fun. We don't do social stuff. And sometimes I do that.
Right.
But I like to think that I have fun and I'm a real human.
Right.
The rest of the time.
I'm a well-rounded individual.
Although I probably shouldn't have said that. I like that people think that we're like loners that read
That's
books.
true. That actually may be. Yeah. That may lead into like the La Dispute myth, where it's just like, yeah, they're crazy shut-ins. It's like the whole next record is about all of them living in individual cabins across the country.
I love people thinking that we're just like, we're like we're normal people,
right?
But I'll just next time I see anyone and they're like, listen to that podcast, you kind of sound like you have fun sometimes. No, I was like kind of playing the part.
Right. Like I really put on a mask.
I gotta go finish this book.
I think that's the most appropriate note to leave it on.
Get through